Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's English file creative writing lesson. My name is Sipati Ratebe, and this lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Sci-Bono Discovery Center and broadcast by Pakama Research and Development. Before we get into today's lesson, I would like us to look at the overview of paper 3, which is creative writing. This paper is out of 100 marks. I'm sure you would agree with me that it has more weighting. And the duration thereof is 2.5 hours. Let's have a look at what instructions to follow when you answer this paper. The question paper consists of 3 sections. We do have section A, which is an essay out of 50. Section B, which is a longer transactional text and is out of 30. Section C, which is a shorter transactional text and that is out of 20. You are expected to answer only one question from each section. Write in the language in which you are being assessed and start each section on a new page. You must plan your work. You've got to edit your work and proofread your work. The plan must appear before each task. All planning must be clearly indicated as such. It is advisable to draw a line through all planning. You are strongly advised to spend approximately 80 minutes on section A, 40 minutes on section B, and 30 minutes on section C. Number the answers correctly according to the numbering system used in the paper. You've got to give each response a suitable title or heading. However, do not consider the title or the heading when doing a word count. Write neatly and legibly. So, let's have a look at today's lesson, the structure of today's lesson. In today's lesson, we will focus on longer transactional text, how to approach answering the longer transactional text. This forms our section B, and this section is made up of the following categories. We've got category A, category B, as well as category C. Let's have a look at category A. This category is formed by a friendly letter, a formal letter. It could be a letter of request, an application letter, a business letter, a complaint, a sympathy, congratulation, or thanks. It is also made up of a curriculum vitae and a covering letter. In most cases, this is being asked as a combination. We also have a formal or informal letter to the press. And lastly, we have an email. Let's have a look at category B. This is made up of a review, newspaper articles, magazine article, agenda and minutes of meeting. They are also asked as a combination. A formal or informal reports. And lastly, an obituary. Let's have a look at category C. This is made up of a dialogue, written interview, written formal or informal speech. Right, let's have a look at the exam instructions in this section. You are expected to choose only one longer transactional text from the ones given, and the body thereof should be between 120 and 150 words in length. Write down the number and the heading of the text you have chosen. For example, 2.1, friendly letter. Your longer transactional text will be assessed according to a 30 marks rubric Pay particular attention to the format, the language, as well as the register. Remember to plan, edit, and proofread your text, clearly indicating planning and cross it out before submitting. Let's have a look at category A, and we will start off with letters. Let's have a look at the informal letter or friendly letter, which are usually written to people who are close to the writer. For example, it could be your parents, it could be your close relatives, it could also be your friends. What is the purpose of these letters? They are mainly written to express an emotion, e.g., to congratulate someone, to sympathize, to advise, amongst others. And the style thereof is informal. But you've got to avoid the following. Please avoid slang as well as colloquial language. Avoid contractions. Avoid abbreviations and acronyms. Innovations such as SMS language should be avoided. Foul language also needs to be avoided. Let's have a look at the format of a friendly letter. We will start first with the address. The friendly letter has only one address, which is the sender's address. There should be no punctuation at the end of the lines. No abbreviations in the address except for P.O. Box if a postal address is being used. Use either a residential address or a post office address, but not both of them. The area postal code must be included. Date must be immediately added after the address and be written in full. The salutation will be formal with use of the first or familiar name, e.g., Dear Piano. What about the ending or the closing? This is also informal, such as your best friend, Anna, yours sincerely, Jane, your favorite niece. Let's have a look at those examples of the addresses that we may use. We've got the P.O. Box address as well as a residential address. Please note that you've got to use one of the two. We cannot use both. Like, for example, you cannot talk of 1880 Mandela Street, P.O. Box 897, Pretoria 0102, 12 April 2022. That would be a wrong address. Let's have a look at the informal letter and the salutation in particular, the greetings in particular. This follows after a skipped line on the left-hand side. The most common form of greeting in a friendly letter is Dear Lekgeto or Dear Mom. Do not punctuate with a colon between dear and name of the recipient. No comma or full stop after the greetings. Look at that. That is an example of the address and our greetings. The address there is 1234 Storm Street, Johannesburg, 1502, 23 August 2020. A line has been skipped, and then we've got the greetings, Dear Mom. Let's have a look at the body of the letter. You also have to leave a line open before starting with the body of the letter. The body of the letter usually consists of 3 paragraphs. You've got to start each paragraph against the margin and leave a line open between paragraphs. Each paragraph should contain different information and state in the first paragraph the reason for writing the letter. It is important that in your first paragraph you explain why are you writing the letter. Let's continue with the body of this letter. The other 2 paragraphs, what do? they expand on the reason for the letter. Then we've got the last paragraph, which is called the concluding paragraph, which is usually short and it rounds off the letter. Avoid ending your letter with "give my regards to all at home" or "best wishes for your family," but rather include regards in the body of the letter. The ending. You have to leave a line open after the last paragraph. Start the ending next to the left-hand side margin. The ending may take several forms, depending on the relationship with the recipient. Yours should start with capital letter, but sincerely should have small letter and no other punctuation should be used. Let's have a look at that again. One surname is unnecessary. If you write to a family member or a close friend, they definitely know your surname, so you don't have to put your surname there. Example, yours sincerely, Tebe. Let's have a look at a checklist of an informal letter. A checklist will guide you in making a point that all the necessary information that is needed in the letter is there. This is the standard checklist that you see there. However, your teacher can add anything that he finds fit to add on the checklist, depending on what he would love to check with you. But let's have a look at this standard checklist. We have an activity there. We have the yes column. We also have the no column, as well as the comment column. Let's have a look at the first activity, which is on the structure. After you have written your letter, you will use this checklist just to see if you have answered the questions appropriately. The first one there is the sender's address. You would check if you have written the sender's address. If the sender's address is there, then it's a tick for yes. If it is not there, then it's a tick for no. If for whatever reason the sender's address is there, but it is not correct, then you would have a tick for yes. However, on the comment section, you would write, for example, the date not being included. Or if, for argument's sake, you have punctuated your address, that would be part of the comment. The same procedure would be followed with your salutation and your ending. You also go to the next activity, which is the content. You read the content. In your first paragraph, have you clearly outlined the purpose of the letter? If not, it would be a no. If yes, it would be a tick in your yes column. However, if there is some information that you should have included in your introduction, that would form part of your comment. The same would go with the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So familiarize yourself with the checklist. It would definitely help you in writing a good letter, having captured all that you need to capture. Now, I'm going to give you an activity. We cannot just listen throughout the whole presentation. You also have to get engaged. But because of time, I would request that this activity be done immediately after the presentation. And you would then use the checklist to assess yourself if you have answered the question the way you are expected to. Or you can give the checklist to your peer, and your peer will then assess your work if you have answered appropriately. Or your teacher can also have a look at that and use the checklist to monitor and control your work. Let's go down to the activity now. This is what you are expected to do. Let's have a look at the brief. Your friend's small business has been affected by the recent protest and looting. He or she lost everything she worked hard for to grow the business in the past 10 years. That is the brief. And that is the instruction. Write a letter in which you comfort and encourage him to look into the future with hope. You are expected to look at the brief, to analyze the brief, and come up with key facts out of the brief. What we can gather from this brief is that your friend had a small business. And because of the protest and the looting, she lost everything that she worked hard for to grow the business in the past 10 years. Sure, what a great loss. Your friend must be grieving over the losses. So as a friend, you are expected to comfort the friend and encourage him to look into the future with hope. That is the activity that I would like you to look into, and at the end of the presentation, answer that question. After you have answered the question, take the checklist. You either do a self-assessment one, or you give it to your peer or your teacher. Right, let's move on to the next text, which is the formal letter. There are different kinds of formal letters, and here we've got a few. We've got letter of application, we've got letter of thanks, we've got letter of complaint, letter of sympathy, a letter of request, and letter to the press. Before writing your letter, you need to consider the following. Read the letter topic to which you need or want to respond carefully. Think about the tone, that is the language of the letter you will write. The language and tone is formal. Always be polite. Identify the purpose and your audience in order to determine the type of letter you will write. What do we mean by the purpose? That can be applying for a job, to give your views on an issue of concern, to complain, or to request information. Your audience would be people you may know personally or who you know in a more formal way, e.g., an educator. Think about and plan your response. What is the register? This refers to the degree of formality. It must be acceptable for the audience and purpose. The letter should be clear and straightforward, concise and to the point. It also has to be logical. And what about the style? That is the word choice. It refers to sentence structure and the tone. You need to write the letter in direct, simple English. Avoid slang and colloquial language. You need to avoid contractions, avoid abbreviations, avoid acronyms. You also need to avoid unsubstantiated accusations. Threats like, I will kill you if you don't carry that instruction. Emotional language, sarcasm, amongst others, needs to be avoided. Right, let's have a look at the address in the case of a formal letter, and that is the format. We will start first with the sender's address. This is written just after the middle of the page on the right-hand side. Sender's address is set in block format, that is straight line and non-slanting. There should be no punctuations at the end of the lines. There should be no abbreviations in the address except for PO box if postal address is being used. By now, you should be familiar with all of these. Use either a residential address. And that is the address that would be delivered at home. Or a post office address. That would use a post office box number. The area postal code must be included. The date must be immediately added after the address and be written in full. The day comes first, then the month, and then the year. That is how your sender's address should look like. If you chose to use a residential address, that is how it will look like. Or a postal address. It will read as follows: P.O. Box 634 Johannesburg 1542. And the date must be included. Let's have a look at the recipient address. This is written against the left-hand margin after a line is skipped. No punctuation at the end of the lines. The title, the manager, the principal, or whoever the letter is written to starts the recipient address. The name of the company immediately follows. There shouldn't be any abbreviation in the address. You must either use a residential or a postal office address, not both. The area postal code must be included. No date to be included in the recipient's address. There we go now. That is how both addresses should look like. The sender's address as well as the recipient address. Maybe let's come up with some form of an illustration that would help you to remember the format of a formal letter. To remember the format of the formal letter, let's think about a traffic officer directing traffic. I hope most of you have seen traffic officers directing traffic. And they look like more or less this young man here or this young woman here. Yes. How to remember the format then with the traffic officer in mind? The top right corner is where the stop sign is. And that is the red, which is normally used for stop. You are not going anywhere, are you? And neither is the date going to change. Therefore, this is where you have to put these details. Red for stop. There comes the traffic officer again. On the other hand, we've got green. That is where the letter goes. That is where you write these details. That is the recipient. So green for go. Let's have a look at the salutation. That is the greetings. Salutation follows on the left-hand side after a line has been skipped as well. Use a formal greeting. Dear sir or dear madam. Do not use dear sir stroke madam. Let's have a look at the subject heading. You also need to skip a line before you write a subject heading. Subject heading is a one-liner that summarizes the content of the letter. Underline the subject heading. Example, complaints, service delivery. Not unless your subject heading is written in capital letters. Then you need not underline it. Let's have a look at the body of the letter there. This is made up of paragraphs. We do have paragraph 1. And in paragraph 1, there is the reason for the letter. A very brief and to the point. So in paragraph 1, we expect you to tell us why are you writing the letter. The reason for the letter. Paragraph 2, that's an expansion of the reason for writing the letter. Each aspect of complaint needs to be mentioned and clearly explained with evidence. Then paragraph 3, suggestions for improving the situation. You also need to come up with such suggestions there. And what about the ending? The most commonly used ending is yours faithfully, uppercase Y, and F is lowercase. Sign your name, then print your name, the title beneath it. Example, yours faithfully, R.L. Peterson, and then you would have the title beneath it. Let's have a look at that example of the format. We do have both addresses, the sender's address as well as the recipient address. They're clearly indicated. We have to skip a line. Dear sir, you also skip a line and you come with the topic sentence there. Complaint, which is service delivery. Then you come with your paragraph number 1. That is where you're going to tell us the reason why are you writing the letter. Paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and then we do have the ending. Yours faithfully, R.L. Peterson, the signature and the name beneath that. Then we have useful sentences, which one can use when you write a letter of application. These are some of the few sentences that you can use. In reply to your advertisement, in the date and the name of the paper should be included there. I would like to apply for the post, which was advertised in Sowetan on this day. It could be the 23rd of August, 2019. I wish to apply for submission to. You would give the name of the institution. Please, as requested, find enclosed letters of reference from your principal or your manager or whoever. And you may also include your years. I am 16 years old. Your qualifications as well are also important. My qualifications are as follows. Then you would give a list of your qualifications there. In the year 2019, I graduated from this institution, from Wits University, and I majored in whatever subject that you would have majored in. You include that there. You must also tell your availability. I am available to attend an interview at a convenient time for you. Remember, these are just useful sentences that you may use when you write this kind of a letter. Let's have a look at the letter of inquiry. What sentences can you employ there? I am interested, or I wish to learn more about. I would be most grateful if you could supply me with the following information. You name that. I would like to get a description of whatever that you'd love to get the description of. Do you supply? That is a question. Then you would ask that question. Does it include dinner, equipment, or activities? Remember, this is a letter of inquiry. You are inquiring. What is the price of whatever per day or per week? I would appreciate if you could do 1, 2, or 3 for me. Kindly respond to my letter. So those would be useful sentences for the letter of inquiry. But let's have a look at the letter of complaint. These are some of the sentences you may use. I wish to draw your attention to. I would suggest that. I suggest that immediate steps be taken. I wish to complain about, you name that as well. I look forward to a prompt reply and hope that you will take into consideration. I'm really dissatisfied with whatever that you are dissatisfied with. You will name it there. And just as we had a checklist for our informal letter, we also have a checklist for the formal letter. Remember what I said, this is just a standard checklist. However, your teacher can add whatever aspect that he or she wants to check if you agree or you know how to go about it. Right, we've got the first activity there, which is the format. We've got the yes, no, and the comment column. The sender's address, if the address is there, you will then indicate with a tick under the yes column, or if it's not there, you would indicate with a tick under the no column. And if the address is there, however, it is not appropriately written, you would write that the address is there, however, the date is not being included. The address is being punctuated, or any other findings you may find in your address. The same with the recipient address, the salutation, and the subject line or the heading. Does the letter, do you have an appropriate ending? Then you also look at the content, the purpose of the letter. Is it clearly outlined? The key aspects of the brief, are they clearly stated? Remember, each aspect must be fully explained with evidence provided. You read that piece, then you would tell if that has been met. Planning, drafting, produced a crafted text. So this checklist would be used, like I said earlier, by yourself or your peer or your teacher, just to check if you have included all the necessary aspects that you need to include in your formal letter. Right, let's have a look at the activity for the formal letter. Remember I said at the end of this presentation, you need to write these activities. You need to respond to the questions. Right, let's have a look at activity number 2, which was taken from 2021 NSC paper. It's a formal letter. It says, some members of your community would like to learn how to read. They have approached you for assistance. You have decided to make a request to a literacy organization to provide reading lessons for these community members. That is the brief. Let's look at the instruction. The instruction says, write a letter. What letter? A letter of request to the manager of the literacy organization and provide reasons why these community members should be given reading lessons. The body of your response should be between 120 and 150 words in length. So that is what you need to do. Write a letter of request to the manager of a literacy organization. In that letter, you've got to provide reasons why these community members should be given reading lessons. Be mindful of the body. It should be between 120 and 150 words in length. Now we're moving on to the next transactional text, which is an obituary. What is an obituary? An obituary is a notice of the passing of someone known by the target audience. Over and above formally announcing the death, it also includes the cause of death as well as the funeral arrangements. The obituary is written in the third person. I repeat, the obituary is written in the third person. There shouldn't be anywhere in your obituary where all of a sudden the deceased he gives an account of his or her life. That is why it is very, very important. It should be written in the third person. Right. Let's have a look at the features of an obituary. The following aspects must be included in your obituary. The full name of the deceased, the date of birth, the place of birth, the date of death, place where she or he lived before death. The key survivors, they need to be mentioned, and a relevant tribute must be paid. Date, time, and place of funeral must be included in the obituary. The following may be included, meaning if you do have them in your obituary, that is good. But if you don't have them, you won't be penalized for not having them in your obituary. And that is the cause of death, the biographical information, and what about the style and tone? The style and the tone of an obituary. The tone is formal and concise. What do you expect from an obituary in terms of the introduction? The first thing that you need to do, you need to read the question carefully. Determine who the person is that passed away and how are you related to the person. That is very, very important. In your first paragraph, you need to include the personal details of the person that has passed on. That is, the full name and surname, the date of birth. This must be written out in words. That is 20 May 2020. The date of death, it must also be written out in words where the person was living at time of death. Also, the name of the organization that writes this tribute or that writes this obituary, e.g., it could be the church, it could be a team, it could be a community, it could be a school or any other organization. Let's have a look at this example so that you get a better understanding of how your introduction will look like. We have lost a brilliant and selfless leader who left a legacy second to none in, you write the full name. He was born on, full date of birth, at, that's where you name the place of birth. He moved to Pretoria, for example, in 2022, where he passed on. You also give the date of death. He will be sorely and dearly missed by the organization that sends the tribute. So you will also put the name of the organization there. Then let's have a look at paragraph 2, where you are expected to write the tribute to the person. So the brief would give guidance in the type of tribute that you would write. What is a tribute? A tribute is something that you say to show that you respect and admire someone or something. What is the focus of a tribute? You need to start off by describing how you are related to the deceased. Describe the traits of the deceased which made an impression and how this person changed the lives of the people he or she came in contact with. Refer to all the good things he or she has done and how these actions benefited others. Let's have a look at an example of the second paragraph there, which would be a tribute. Although our school, that would be the organization that sends the tribute, or although our team or soccer team shall miss a quality leader, death should not be proud. His untimely death has also set us back, as it has robbed us of a really considerate, selfless, and dedicated leader who had always put others first. He possessed mentoring skills that benefited everyone who worked closely with him. He was patient and made friends with all the people he engaged with. That is an example of a tribute. Let's have a look at the third paragraph of your obituary, how to write it then. In this paragraph, you need to refer to the people left behind by name. Not just giving numbers, you also have to give names. Include the date, the time, and place of the funeral. You also need to add last words of condolences. Let's have a look at that example for paragraph 3. He is survived by, you would mention the name of closest family member there. He will be laid to rest on. You include the date, you include the time, as well as the venue. It is our wish to express our desire that the Almighty God, through our sincere prayer, heals and consoles the family members who have experienced the sad and solemn event. May his soul rest in peace. Remember, you are expected to answer in the language that you are being assessed. Meaning, we should not say, Rubalaka khozotlo, lalangotol, because you are expected to respond in the language that you are being assessed. Let's have a look at the checklist of an obituary. Remember, a checklist is used to help you to write everything that you need to write. Let's go back to the checklist. Do you still have it in mind? The checklist for an obituary. Let's have a look at that. Just like other checklists, it also has an activity column, a yes column, a no column, as well as a column comment. Let's have a look at the content. The first aspect that you need to check is the full name of the deceased. Then the date and place of birth, the date of death, where the person was living at the time of death is also important. The key survivors and their names, a tribute, date, time, and place of burial. Remember this checklist, you can use that, or you can give that to your peer to check against your work, or your teacher can use it to check against your work. The most important thing is that it needs to be completed and comments must be written. Like for instance, if you have just named the key survivors, but you haven't said anything about the tribute, or if you have not given the place of burial, you only gave the date, the time, that can be put in the comment. So the column for comments is basically used for feedback. if you have included all the necessary elements, if you do have a tribute, and if not, the comment would give a clear indication what needs to be done in your piece. Right. I hope you have looked at the checklist and you're comfortable with all aspects that needs to be checked. Let's now go to the third activity. Your teacher has passed on due to COVID-related symptoms. As the secretary of your school's representative council of learners, your principal has asked you to write an obituary. Write an obituary in which you also pay tribute to him. This is very important. The body of your response should be between 120 and 150 words in length. Use the checklist to make sure you have included all the information. So that's another activity that you need to embark on at the end of this presentation. Right, let's move on to the next text there, which is a dialogue or interview. What is a dialogue? A dialogue is a conversation between two or more people. It is a record of exchanges as they occur directly from the speaker's point of view. And what's an interview? An interview is similar to a dialogue. The major difference is that in an interview, the one speaker probes the other by asking questions, whereas in a dialogue, the speaker engages in a conversation. So when writing a dialogue or an interview, you need to write the names of the characters on the left side of the page. Use a colon after the name of the character who is speaking. Use a new line to indicate each speaker. Avoid using long greetings and introductions. Respond to the brief in the question. Stage direction must be given in brackets before the words are spoken. Sketch a scenario before you start writing. Let's have a look at features of a dialogue. Here we've got this dialogue. Mbali and Temba have not completed their English homework. They are standing behind a tree, thinking of bunking the class. Mbali, who is one of the characters, says, "Have you done your English homework? I have really forgotten to do mine." Temba, looking around, "Be quiet. Someone will hear you." "No, I haven't done mine either. I think we should bunk the English period. This tree will be a wonderful hiding spot." Mbalik speaks there. "Bunk class?" My answer is no. I made my bed, so I must lie in it. I hate it when you throw idioms at me. That is why you need the English class. Come, we will face our dearest teacher together. Let's have a look at the checklist there. Please remember that this checklist is just a standard checklist. Your teacher can add any other aspect that he or she needs to test in your writing. So let's go through the checklist of this dialogue. Like the rest, it also has an activity, a yes column, a no column, as well as comments column. The first thing that you need to check is the scenario, which is a brief context that you would have given at the beginning of the dialogue. Check if that is there. If it's there, it's a yes. If it's not there, it is then a no. And then you will write appropriate comments. The names of characters on the left-hand side, a colon used after the name of the character who is speaking, a new line used to indicate each new speaker, stage direction given in brackets before the words are spoken. So if there isn't such, You would tick in the no column and comment that stage direction has not been employed. This is very, very important. That is number 6. Greetings and introductions, short and appropriate to the brief. They need to be short and appropriate to the brief. Some learners would take 7 to 8 lines on greetings. Good morning, John. How are you, John? And you talk about the weather. And you talk about everything else except the brief. Before you even know it, you are almost at the required number of words. So be mindful of the greetings and your introduction. That needs to be short and appropriate to the brief in question. There shouldn't be inverted commas, no slang at all. So that is our standard checklist for a dialogue. You can assess yourself, or you can be assessed by your peer or your teacher. If it's yourself, we will talk of self-assessment, where you would complete the checklist. If you give your work to your peer, it will be peer assessment, where your peer will then check your work against the list and write the comments. If your teacher is the one who will be looking at your work, then he will complete the checklist as well and comment appropriately, depending on what you would have presented. Right, so yes, today you do have some work to do, yeah? But don't worry, you've got the whole week to write all of these activities. Then we are on activity 4, which is also taken from the 2021 NSC paper 3. You are expected to write this dialogue. A radio station is hosting a competition in search of a new presenter. One of your friends has got good public speaking skills. You want to encourage him or her to enter this presenter search competition. Write the dialogue between you and your friend. The body of your response should be between 120 and 150 words in length. That is straightforward. You've got a radio station which is hosting a competition in search of a new presenter, and you've got a friend, and this friend has good public speaking skills. So you write the letter to encourage him to enter the presenter search competition. Right, there you go. Okay, let's move on now to the email, which is another transactional text that is expected in section B. What is an email? The word email is derived from electronic mail. In this world of technology, electronic communication is fast replacing the traditional letter writing of the past. We all used to write letters in the past, but not now. An electronic mail is posted from one device to one or more recipients with the support of the internet. What are the basic elements of an email message? Right, these are the basic elements of an email message. We've got the sender, which is from. This information is automatic. The recipient will see who have sent the email. As the sender, you need not write your email. That is automatic. And 2, that is where the email is being sent. The recipient of the email. This is required. You need to write the recipient's address, e.g., label@gmail.com. Many a times, the first part of the email, it is the recipient's name, which is normally called the username. We also have CC there, one element which is called CC, which stands for carbon copy. This is optional. E.g., If you would love to inform the head of the unit about the information you are sending to the recipient, the person or the head of the unit does not necessarily have to act upon the information. All that he needs to do is to be aware that the information has been sent to the recipient. We also have the BCC, which is the blind carbon copy. This is also optional. People who receive the email but are not listed as recipients. So those are the people who would receive the email, even though they are not listed as recipients. What does that mean? It means, as the recipient, you wouldn't be able to see their names. That is why it's called a blind carbon copy. You wouldn't know who else has been sent the information. Unlike the carbon copy, with the blind carbon copy, you won't be able to see the names of the recipient. We also have the date. This is also automatic. So you need not write the date. Immediately you send an email, the date comes up. The subject, this is very, very important. This is a summary of the content of the email. Why are you writing the email? Right? That is the subject. You summarize the content. A brief topic sentence of your email or of the message. We also have the salutation. Email salutation or greetings, e.g., dear Tapelo or dear colleagues. We have the email body. This is required as well. That is the message of the email. That is the reason why you are writing that email. That is the purpose for the email. So that is very, very important. It needs to be captured as well. We have what we call attachment. This is optional. An email can include one or more file attachments, allowing a person to send documents or pictures. Many a times, we would have a very brief message, and that message would be supported by attachments. That is where you would have pictures, you would have file attachment, you would have some documents, you would have a CV attached as well, and many more information that you need to send to the recipient. And lastly, we do have this, that is the sender's name. Remember, the sender may choose to provide other contact details at the end, and that is called the signature. Remember what I said earlier, that is the sender's address is automatic. It will definitely show up. However, the sender may also choose to provide other contact details at the end of the email or at the end of the message. And this is called a signature. Those are the basic elements of an email. Let's have a look at this example. This is just a standard email. It has the recipient's address, which is jason@yahoo.co.za. And we have this person who has also been CC, that is safo@yahoo.uk. He has been copied. We also have the subject of the email, which is SADC essay competition. Let's have a look at the message. We've got greetings there. and that is, dear colleagues. And this is how the message goes. The topic for the 2022 SADC competition is, how can SADC boost productive capacities in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic? You are reminded that all entries should be typed and submitted in electronic version and in hard copies. Deadline for submission to the Department of Basic Education is the 14th of April 2022. And the email is from Jake Yam. Kind regards, Jake Yam. That's a standard email. SAFO has been copied. We do have the recipient's address. We do have the subject. We do have the message. We do have the ending. However, we don't have attachments. So have a look at that. It's a standard email that has been sent to Jason. Let's have a look at the weighting and the rubrics that are being used in longer transactional pieces. So all longer transactional pieces will be assessed according to the following criteria. The first one is the content, the planning, and the format, which is out of 18, and that forms 60% of the text. We also have language, style, and editing, which is out of 12, and that forms 40% of the transactional text, giving us a total of 30. A rubric is used to mark a longer transactional text or even a shorter transactional text, as well as an essay. Herewith is the rubric for a longer transactional text. We've got the top part there, which addresses content, planning, as well as format. And then we do have the lower part, which addresses the language, the style, as well as editing. I would love to believe that you are familiar with the rubric. When you look at that, you can see that we do have different categories. And in each and every category, we have descriptors. We've got the exceptional category. We also have the very good category. We have the average category, as well as the elementary and the inadequate category. In each of those categories, we do have descriptors that informs the category. I would love to believe that by now, your teacher have taken you through the rubric. And at the end of each piece, you clearly understand why were you given, for argument's sake, a 15 for content and maybe a 9 for language. Or you were given a 10 for content and a 6 for language. Kindly look at that rubric. With the help of your teacher, it would assist you in responding well to the brief and in addressing all the descriptors that are there in each and every category. We do have areas of concern regarding the writing of the longer transactional piece. And these are some of the concerns that have been raised. Instructions not followed. Remember when we started, I gave you an outline of how this paper is structured and what instructions you need to follow. Unfortunately, most candidates or most learners do not follow instructions. And because of that, they end up underperforming in a particular piece. Not because they don't know, only because they did not follow the instructions. And that is what has been picked up. Learners exceed the number of words required. You are expected to adhere to the learn. The handwriting. Wow. Your teacher finds it difficult to read your work. That is a serious concern. And if need be, you need to improve on your handwriting. Otherwise, you will lose marks, not because you did not write well, only because the handwriting is not that good. The formats. Different formats of different text. Learners don't seem to be knowing what format to use for what text. There's also limited vocabulary, which leads to inability to understand the topics. If learners don't have the necessary vocab, definitely they will find it difficult to understand the topic. This is also a serious concern. Learners not being exposed enough to a variety of text. For you to get any writing right, you need to practice and practice and practice. You need to be exposed enough to a variety of text. That would enable you to master the text. That is also a serious concern because most of you seem not to be exposed to a variety of text. What recommendations do we have regarding all of those concerns? You need to follow instructions. Simple as that. In this category, in this section, which is section B, you are expected to write only one question. And for some reason, some learners choose to write 2 questions. Why do you write 2 questions? You are not following the instruction. If the instruction says write 1 question from each section, that is exactly what you need to do. Nothing less, nothing more. So you need to follow instructions. The word count may not be exceeded. Don't get too excited and feel that, wow, I've got so much information to share. Then you write 3 pages. That is not correct. Basically, you will be disadvantaging yourself because it would mean your work won't have a concluding paragraph. And that is a major digression if you don't have concluding paragraph. So please stick to the number of words. Respond to the brief. It is important that you respond to the brief. And for you to respond to the brief, you need to understand. You need to have the necessary vocab. You need to identify the key words and respond appropriately. If you don't have the vocab, you cannot identify keywords, you definitely would not be able to respond to the brief. So you need to take care of those aspects. Choose a topic that appeals to you. Don't choose something that you have never heard about. Something that you think you know. Choose a topic that appeals to you. That you know that I can say something about this. I definitely can say something about this. And then you plan the response. How? You use mind maps. You use diagrams. You always have to keep the target audience in mind. That needs to be kept constantly in mind. We spoke about the brief. As you read the brief, You've got to be able to analyze the text. You've got to be able to identify keywords, and you have to stick to the guidelines given. This is very, very important. Write legibly. Please, grade 12 learners, improve on your handwriting if you do have a challenge. However, I'm sure you cannot afford to fail, not because you don't know, only because of the handwriting. So if you do have such a challenge, I'm making a special appeal. Improve on your handwriting. Enable your teacher to read what you would have written. Pay attention to spelling as well as punctuation. As you proofread, as you edit your work, check that you have correct spelling, you have punctuated your work. If it's an essay or if it's a formal piece, you have not used contractions and all of that. It is important that you pay attention to that. Edit the writing piece thoroughly. What do we mean by that? Check it at least 3 times. Don't rush over it. Check it at least 3 times and then edit it accordingly. Always draw a line through all rough drafts. It is important that you draw a line over it, because if you don't, it tells a different story. The draft must be edited so that it does not look like an identical neat copy. Please edit the draft. It should not be confusing. It shouldn't be like, wow, this is another piece. Oh, this is the same piece. Oh, this is something else. There should be clear evidence that it's a draft and it has been edited. Formats for transactional writing pieces are still a problem. Learners are still struggling with the formats. And it is therefore very, very important that you study all formats. Not some, all formats, e.g., the one to the letter to the editor. It has to be studied. The format of a dialogue, the format of a speech, the format of an email, the format of an obituary. All of those formats, they need to be studied. Because clearly, in each and every report that we get at the end of the year, the format, it's still a problem. But I know and I believe that this year, we wouldn't be having such problems. I'm definitely sure that you are going to get the format of each and every transactional text correct. You are expected to use the appropriate format for the different genres. Bear in mind, I have given you a checklist to use to guide in terms of the format for different genres. Use that. It will definitely benefit you. When you look at paper 3, this paper carries 100 marks. Remember what I said when we started, when I gave you the layout. It's out of 100 with a duration of 2.5 hours. That means it has more weighting as compared to paper 1 as well as paper 2. So what does that mean? More time should be spent on teaching. More time should be spent on learning creativity. More time should be spent on practicing and improving your writing skills, as well as formats of transactional text by using past papers to practice. So it is important that you practice. Practice makes perfect. Oh yes, I remember. I believe you all have your book 4, wherein you practice all of these papers. You practice your paper 1, you practice your paper 2, you practice your paper 3. That would enable you to perform better at the end of the year. And how do you do that practice? You use the previous question papers. But there should be evidence that you are practicing. Without evidence, I'm not convinced. So use those previous question papers to practice. That brings us to the end of this session. Thank you very much. And thank you once more for watching this lesson